the Diakonia project, and diakonia is a Greek word that means the act of being called into service. It's actually the word that we get deacon from in the Christian tradition.
Wonderful. Tell us about the 8 faith-based initiatives and the 3 leaders.
Sure. So the what we've done with the Diakonia project is we've profiled 8 different faith-based initiatives across the country in different regions by different faith communities doing different things. And what we're hoping to demonstrate by this is that the freedom of religion is not simply the freedom to worship, which gets diminished too often these days, but actually freedom of worship is linked profoundly to action. And so these are examples of people in different faith communities who take their faith and live it out in the public square through action, not simply to help those of their own faith community, but actually to help build our common life.
Wonderful. How do you find it out in the communities, the trenches, if you will, Father Andrew, about joining other faiths together in our communities? Is everyone really receptive to it?
Well, I think we can speak of 2 different things. I think, first of all, most Canadians realize that faith communities engage in these types of outreach. So, some of the things we've profiled, Susan, are, for example, a charity in Toronto with the Jewish community that is engaged in homelessness outreach. We also looked at an organization led by the Archdiocese of Montreal that accompanies people who are shut in, often people who have just come out of hospital and need spiritual accompaniment, or just a friend who can be present with them. We've also profiled the Union Gospel Mission in Vancouver's downtown east side. Now, I think most Canadians realize that in their community, there are these faith communities that do this. So, for example, if you want to put your son into the Boy Scouts, you know that Christchurch Anglican, maybe down the street, has a Boy Scouts troop. Or if you need to take advantage of a 12-step program, you can go to Sacred Heart. Canadians know this, and so what we're trying to do is demonstrate that faith communities are engaged in the world in these ways, singularly, but often in collaboration with one another, especially as we've seen during this pandemic.
So, Father Andrew, we're in a real protective mode right now as a people, if you will. We're the COVID has introduced a protectionist kind of feeling. Why is it so important for people of all faiths to contribute?
Well, I think we have to remember that to live according to a religious tradition, to have a religious faith, is not merely a private matter, but we are called by our faith, especially for those of us who are Christians, we're called by our baptism to live out our faith. And so, religious freedom, as I've often said, is not simply about a private faith. We always have our private faith, whether we're exercising that at home, in our own prayer life, or maybe in a particular place of worship with other people. But religious freedom is about publicly living out our faith, the freedom to do that, the freedom to establish institutions, the freedom to establish these types of outreach initiatives that assist others. Again, we're not just doing these initiatives or launching these types of public actions simply for our own faith communities, but really for the life of the world, and to reach out through works of mercy to those who are most in need.
So, in the age that we're living in now, would you say, Father Andrew, that we are a more tolerant people in multicultural Canada?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I think what we have to recognize is that for some time we've been challenged by maybe a bit of ignorance about what religious people do as we live in an increasingly secularist society. But at the same time, as I said, many people in our communities, even people who don't have a particular religious tradition, know that religious people do these good works and are engaged in these types of initiatives. So that's one way, Susan, in which we can engage the broader community to talk about our faith, that the homelessness programs that we have, the refugee resettlement programs we have, the accompaniment of people struggling with addiction, we do these because of our faith. And most of these initiatives are not receiving government funding. They're not receiving corporate funding. These are people who establish these programs and these initiatives because their faith calls them to do that. And so one thing I think we have to do better, whether we're speaking as Christians or other communities, is that we need to be able to fully explain to those in our society why we do what we do, and to explain how worship connects with action.
So wonderfully said. Thank you so much, Father Andrew, for joining us, and keep up the great work. And there'll be more on our website about how people can read more about it.
Thanks very much, Susan. It was a pleasure as always to be with you.
Thank you.